In the misty village of St. Mary's Mead, a master horologist lies dead in his locked clock shop, poisoned by a cup of tea, the hands of a majestic grandfather clock frozen at 11:47. Hercule Poirot, with his razor-sharp mind, unravels a web of secrets, a rival's envy, a collector's obsession, and an apprentice's ambition. The missing Chronos veil, a revolutionary clock hiding a secret, holds the key to murder. As the clocks fall silent, Poirot's little gray cells tick relentlessly. Will he catch the killer before time runs out? Chapter 1. The Ticking Silence. The village of St. Mary's Mead, nestled in the rolling hills of the English countryside, wore its autumnal hues with a quiet dignity. Mist clung to the cobblestones, and the air carried the faint scent of damp leaves and wood smoke. At the heart of the village stood Wren's clock shop, its bow window adorned with gleaming timepieces that ticked in harmonious discord, a testament to the craftsmanship of its proprietor, Mr. Archibald Wren. The shop was a sanctuary of precision, where pendulums swung with unerring rhythm and chimes sang the hours with crystalline clarity. Yet, on this particular October morning, an unnatural hush had fallen over the establishment, as if time itself held its breath. Hercule Poirot, the diminutive Belgian detective with a mustache as immaculate as his reputation, stepped from a hired car onto the village square. His patent leather shoes gleamed despite the morning's drizzle, and his green eyes, sharp as a hawk's, surveyed the scene with keen interest. A telegram from Inspector Japp of Scotland Yard had summoned him with uncharacteristic urgency, its sparse words hinting at a mystery both perplexing and grim. Murder at Wren's clock shop. Locked room. Your expertise required. Poirot, ever intrigued by the impossible, had accepted the challenge without hesitation. As he approached the shop, the door swung open to reveal Inspector Japp, his face etched with the strain of a man grappling with the inexplicable. "Poirot, thank heaven you're here," he said, his voice low. "It's a queer business, this. Archibald Wren, dead as a doornail, and not a soul could have got in or out." Poirot's mustache twitched as he stepped inside, his cane tapping lightly on the polished floor. The shop was a marvel of order, shelves lined with pocket watches, mantel clocks, and cuckoo clocks, each gleaming under the soft glow of a chandelier. But the usual symphony of ticks and tocks was absent, replaced by a silence so profound it seemed to press against the walls. At the center of the room stood a magnificent grandfather clock, its walnut case towering like a silent sentinel. Its hands were frozen at 11:47, the pendulum still, as if it too mourned its master. Behind the counter, sprawled across a ledger, lay the body of Archibald Wren. His face, framed by silver hair, was serene, almost peaceful, but the pallor of death was unmistakable. A porcelain teacup lay shattered on the floor, its contents staining the ledger with a dark, spreading pool. The faint, bitter scent of almonds hung in the air, a whisper of poison that Poirot's keen senses detected at once. "Mon Dieu," Poirot murmured, his eyes narrowing as he took in the scene. "The room, it is locked, you say?" Japp nodded, gesturing to the sturdy oak door and the windows, their bolts firmly in place. "Locked from the inside, Poirot." The key was in Wren's pocket, no sign of forced entry, no windows broken. The local constable checked the back door. Same story. And yet, here he is, dead. The doctor's certain it's poison, likely cyanide, in the tea. But how did the killer manage it? Poirot knelt beside the body, his gloved fingers delicately lifting the edge of the ledger to avoid disturbing the evidence. The spilled tea had soaked into the pages, blurring entries of sales and repairs, but Poirot's attention lingered on the teacup's fragments. "The tea? It was his habit, he asked. "Every evening, according to the apprentice," Japp replied. "Wren would take his tea at 8, like clockwork. The kettle's over there." Cold as stone, Poirot rose, his gaze drifting to the grandfather clock. Its face, adorned with Roman numerals, bore a faint scratch near the keyhole, almost imperceptible. He ran a finger along the wood, noting the absence of dust on its surface. "This clock, Inspector, it is the heart of the mystery. Why is it stopped? In a shop where time is king, such a silence is not natural." Japp scratched his head. "You think the clock's got something to do with it?" "Maybe it just wound down." Poirot's lips curved into a faint smile. "Non, non, my friend. A clock of this craftsmanship does not simply stop. It was stopped deliberately to tell us something, or to hide it. We must listen to what it whispers." He turned to Japp, his expression grave. "Who had access to this shop, Inspector? Who could approach Monsieur Wren so closely as to poison his tea?" Japp sighed, pulling out a notebook. "3 people, near as we can tell. Reginald Thorne, a rival clockmaker with a shop across the square. Bit of bad blood there, I hear. Miss Clara Henshaw, a wealthy spinster who's one of Wren's best customers. And Timothy Gale, the apprentice, a young lad who's been with Wren 2 years. They're all waiting to be questioned." Poirot nodded, his mind already turning like the gears of the silent clocks around him. "Then we shall meet these suspects, and we shall see what secrets they keep. But first, the clock. It holds the key, I am certain. Its silence is not an accident, but a message." As Japp led the way to gather the suspects, Poirot lingered a moment longer, his eyes fixed on the grandfather clock. In its stillness, he sensed the pulse of the crime, a rhythm waiting to be deciphered by the little gray cells that had never failed him. Chapter 2. The 3 suspects. The interior of Wren's clock shop, though steeped in an unnatural hush, seemed to pulse with secrets as Hercule Poirot stood amidst its silent mechanisms. The air was heavy with the scent of polished wood and brass, tinged faintly with the acrid bitterness of spilled tea and the sinister undertone of cyanide. The grandfather clock, its hands arrested at 11:47, loomed over the scene like a mute witness, its stillness a challenge to Poirot's meticulous mind. Inspector Japp, his brow furrowed with the weight of an impossible crime, gestured toward the back room where the suspects awaited, their presence a trio of threads in the tangled skein of this mystery. "Come, Poirot," Japp said, his voice low but urgent. "They're all here, Thorne, Henshaw, and the lad, Gale. Each one's got a story, but I'll wager one of them's hiding more than they let on." Poirot adjusted his pristine cuffs, his green eyes glinting with the quiet intensity of a man who saw not just the surface, but the currents beneath. "Oui, Inspector. In a locked room, the truth is like a clock. It requires only the right key to set it in motion. Let us meet these keepers of time." They passed through a velvet curtain into the back room, a cramped workshop, where tools gleamed on racks and half-finished clocks lay like dissected creatures, their gears exposed. 3 figures sat in uneasy silence, their postures betraying the strain of scrutiny. Poirot's gaze swept over them, cataloging details with the precision of a master horologist. A fidgeting hand, a too stiff smile, a glance averted just a moment too late. Japp cleared his throat. "This is Monsieur Hercule Poirot, the detective I mentioned. He's here to get to the bottom of Mr. Wren's death. Now, let's have your stories again, and mind you tell it straight." The first to speak was Mr. Reginald Thorne, a wiry man in his late 50s, whose sharp features and sharper eyes suggested a mind honed by rivalry. His dark suit was impeccably tailored, though a faint smudge of oil on his cuff hinted at recent work with machinery. He leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, exuding a confidence that bordered on defiance. "I've told you already, Inspector," Thorne said, his voice clipped. "I was at my own shop across the square all evening, working on a regulator clock for a client in Bath. My assistant, Jenkins, can vouch for me, though he's off to London for a few days. As I mentioned, I had no reason to come here, and certainly no reason to harm Wren. Poirot tilted his head, his mustache twitching slightly. "And yet, Monsieur Thorne, there is talk of a rivalry between you and the deceased. A matter of patents, perhaps, or a client poached." Thorne's jaw tightened, but his tone remained steady. "Rivalry? Pah, Wren was a tinkerer, not a genius. His clocks sold because he undercut prices, not because they were better. As for patents, I've no need to steal. My designs stand on their own." Poirot's eyes lingered on Thorne's hands, noting the faint calluses of a man who worked with precision tools. "And yet, a man of your skill might envy another's innovation, non? Tell me, when did you last see Monsieur Wren?" Thorne hesitated, a flicker of unease crossing his face. "2 days ago, at the market. We exchanged words. Civil ones, mind you. Nothing more." Poirot nodded, his expression unreadable. "We shall see, monsieur. The truth, it has a way of ticking louder than any clock." Next was Miss Clara Henshaw, a woman of perhaps 40, whose elegance was as polished as the clocks she coveted. Her auburn hair was swept into a neat chignon, and her emerald dress, adorned with lace, spoke of wealth and taste. She sat with the poise of a lady accustomed to command, yet her fingers toyed with a pearl brooch, betraying a nervous energy. "I am devastated by Mr. Wren's passing," she said, her voice soft but measured. "He was a true artist. I visited him yesterday afternoon to discuss a Viennese regulator I wished to purchase for my collection. We spoke for perhaps 20 minutes, and I left before dusk. I was home by 6, as my housekeeper can confirm." Poirot's gaze sharpened. "A Viennese regulator, mademoiselle? A rare piece and costly. Did Monsieur Wren agree to sell it?" Miss Henshaw's lips pursed briefly. "He was reluctant. He said it needed adjustments, but I sensed he was holding it back for another buyer. I pressed him, but he was firm. I left it at that." Poirot noted the faint flush on her cheeks, the way her eyes darted to the side. "And you did not return later, perhaps to persuade him further?" Her eyes widened, a flash of indignation. "Certainly not. I am not in the habit of skulking about shops after hours, Monsieur Poirot." "Bien sûr," Poirot said smoothly. "But a collector's passion, it can be a powerful force, no? Tell me, did you partake of tea with Monsieur Wren during your visit?" Miss Henshaw shook her head. "No," he offered, "but I declined. I prefer my tea at home, brewed to my taste." Poirot's smile was enigmatic. "A wise choice, perhaps, given the circumstances." The final suspect was Timothy Gale, the apprentice, a lanky youth of 20 with tousled brown hair and eyes that darted like a cornered animal's. His hands, stained with ink and oil, fidgeted in his lap, and his threadbare jacket suggested a life of modest means. He sat hunched, as if trying to shrink from the room's attention. "I locked up at 6, just like always," Timothy said, his voice trembling slightly. "Mister, Wren was still working, said he'd finish up and lock the back door himself. I went straight home to my cottage. I didn't see him after that, I swear. Poirot leaned forward, his voice gentle but probing. You were close to your master, Monsieur Gale. He taught you the art of horology, oui? Timothy nodded, swallowing hard. He was strict, but fair. Taught me everything, gears, springs, escapements. I owe him a lot. And yet, Poirot said, his tone sharpening, to owe much can breed resentment, non? Did you ever feel, perhaps, that Monsieur Wren held you back? Timothy's face paled. No. I mean, he could be hard, but I'd never hurt him. He was like a father to me. Poirot's eyes narrowed, catching the tremor in the boy's voice. A father, you say? And yet, fathers and sons, they sometimes clash, do they not? Timothy fell silent, his gaze fixed on the floor. Poirot straightened, his mind already weaving the threads of their stories into a tapestry of motives and opportunities. Japp, growing impatient, broke the silence. Well, Poirot? They've all got alibis, flimsy or not, but the shop was locked tight, and that poison didn't pour itself. Poirot paced the workshop, his steps measured, his hands clasped behind his back. He paused before a workbench cluttered with tools, a screwdriver, a pair of pliers, a magnifying glass. Beside them lay a small brass key, its surface polished to a shine. He picked it up, turning it in his gloved fingers. This key, he said, holding it aloft. It belongs to the shop's back door, oui? Japp nodded. Found it on the hook by the door, just where the apprentice said it's kept. Poirot's eyes gleamed. And yet, a key in its place does not mean it was not used. Tell me, Inspector, have you searched the premises thoroughly? Japp frowned. As thoroughly as we could. Nothing out of place, except that spilled tea and the stopped clock. Poirot turned to the grandfather clock, its towering presence dominating the shop. He ran a finger along its base, noting the absence of dust, the faint scratch near the keyhole he had observed earlier. He opened the clock's door, peering into its intricate workings. The pendulum hung still, but the gears were pristine, untouched by neglect. This clock, Poirot said softly, it is a masterpiece. To stop it is to silence a heart. But why? To mark a moment or to obscure it? He closed the door and faced the suspects, his gaze piercing. Each of you had means to enter this shop. Monsieur Thorne, your shop is but a stone's throw away, and a rival's envy is a powerful motive. Mademoiselle Henshaw, your passion for clocks might drive you to desperate measures. And Monsieur Gale, an apprentice with ambition, may seek to outshine his master. But the truth, it lies in the details, the tea, the key, the clock. Thorne bristled. You're grasping at straws, Poirot. I've no blood on my hands. Miss Henshaw's voice was icy. I resent the implication, monsieur. I am a lady, not a murderer. Timothy's voice cracked. I told you, I locked up and left. I didn't do anything. Poirot raised a hand, silencing them. The little gray cells, they are at work. You will each be questioned further, but for now, I ask you to remain in the village. The clock may be silent, but it will speak before I am done. As Japp escorted the suspects out, Poirot lingered in the workshop, his eyes returning to the grandfather clock. He tapped its case lightly, listening to the faint echo within. You, mon ami, he murmured, you know the hour of the crime. But do you also know the hand that stopped you? He turned to Japp, who had returned, rubbing his hands against the morning chill. What now, Poirot? We've got 3 suspects, but no proof. The poison's one thing, but how'd they get in and out of a locked shop? Poirot's smile was serene. patience, my friend. The locked room, it is not so impenetrable as it seems. We must examine the shop more closely, the windows, the locks, the very walls, and we must learn more of Monsieur Wren, his life, his enemies, his secrets. A man does not die by poison without reason. Japp sighed. You and your secrets, Poirot. What's next, then? Poirot's eyes twinkled. We begin with the ledger, Inspector. The records of Monsieur Wren's business may tell us who coveted his time and his life, and then we shall visit the homes of our suspects. The truth, it leaves traces, like dust on a neglected clock. As they stepped back into the shop, the silence seemed to deepen, the stopped clocks watching like silent sentinels. Poirot's mind, however, was anything but still. The gears of his little gray cells turned, aligning the fragments of this puzzle. A poisoned cup, a stopped clock, a locked door. Somewhere within lay the truth, and Hercule Poirot would not rest until he had set it ticking once more. Chapter 3. The Horologist's Legacy. The mist that clung to Saint. Mary's mead had thickened by midday, shrouding the village in a veil that muffled sound and softened edges. Hercule Poirot, undeterred by the damp chill, stood once more in the hushed confines of Wren's clock shop, his gloved hands clasped behind his back. The grandfather clock, its hands still frozen at 11:47, seemed to loom larger in the gray light filtering through the shop's windows. Inspector Japp, ever the pragmatist, rummaged through a stack of papers on the counter, his frustration evident in the creases of his brow. "Blast it, Poirot," Japp muttered, flipping through the tea-stained ledger. "This is all sales and repairs, nothing that screams murder. What are we looking for exactly?" Poirot's eyes, bright with purpose, flickered to the ledger. "We seek the heart of Monsieur Wren, Inspector. His work, his passions, his secrets. These are the springs that drive this mystery. A man who crafts time does not die by chance." Japp snorted but handed over the ledger, its pages crinkled from the spilled tea. Poirot settled at the counter, his movements precise as he donned a pair of spectacles, a rare concession to practicality. The ledger was a meticulous record of Wren's business, sales of mantel clocks to local gentry, repairs for farmers' pocket, watches and commissions for bespoke pieces. Yet, as Poirot's finger traced the entries, he noted a pattern: frequent transactions with Miss Clara Henshaw, her name appearing beside purchases of rare European clocks, and a single cryptic note dated a week prior. Discussion with R.T. repatent dispute. No resolution. "Tiens," Poirot murmured, tapping the page. "A dispute with Monsieur Thorne. This is not mere rivalry, but a wound that festers." Japp leaned over, squinting at the entry. "Thorne again. You think he's our man?" Poirot's mustache twitched. "I think nothing yet, my friend. I observe. But this patent, it is a thread we must follow." He closed the ledger and turned his attention to the workshop, where the air was thick with the scent of oil and sawdust. The workbench was a chaos of tools and half-assembled mechanisms, yet each item was placed with an artisan's care. Poirot's gaze fell on a locked wooden box, its surface carved with intricate clock motifs. He tested the lid, finding it secure, and noted a small keyhole that matched none of the keys on the nearby hook. "Inspector," Poirot said, beckoning Japp. "This box, it is not ordinary. We must open it." Japp called for the constable, who arrived with a set of lock-picking tools. After a few deft maneuvers, the box clicked open, revealing a bundle of papers and a single brass gear, its edge engraved with the initials A.W. The papers were blueprints, meticulously drawn, depicting a clock unlike any Poirot had seen. A complex mechanism with a hidden compartment, designed to conceal a small object. The notes described it as the Chronos Veil, a clock that could guard a secret within time itself. Poirot's eyes gleamed. This, Inspector, is the legacy of Monsieur Wren. A masterpiece, and perhaps the motive for his death. Where is this clock now? Japp scratched his head. Not in the shop, that's certain. We searched every corner. Could have been stolen. Or hidden, Poirot countered. A creation of such value would not be left exposed. We must learn more of its purpose, and who knew of its existence. He turned to the door, where Timothy Gale, the apprentice, hovered, summoned back for further questioning. The young man's face was pale, his eyes red-rimmed, as if sleep had eluded him. He clutched a worn cap, twisting it nervously. "Monsieur Gale," Poirot began, his tone gentle but firm. "You were privy to your master's work. Tell me of this Chronos Veil. What made it so special?" Timothy's eyes widened, a flicker of fear crossing his features. I don't know much. Mr. Wren was secretive about it. He'd work on it late at night after I'd gone home. Said it was his greatest creation, something that would put his name in history." Poirot tilted his head, studying the boy's trembling hands. "And you never saw it? Never glimpsed its design?" Timothy shook his head vigorously. "No, sir." He kept the blueprints locked away. I only saw him sketching once, but he covered it when he noticed me. Poirot's smile was faint, almost pitying. A master does not hide his work from a trusted apprentice without reason. Did you ever feel, perhaps, that he doubted your loyalty? Timothy flushed, his voice rising. "I was loyal. I worked hard, learned everything he taught me. I'd never betray him." Poirot nodded, but his eyes lingered on Timothy's ink-stained fingers. "And yet, ambition is a restless companion. No? We shall speak again, Monsieur Gale." As Timothy was dismissed, Poirot returned to the blueprints, his mind racing. The Chronos Veil was more than a clock. It was a puzzle, a secret encased in gears and springs. Its absence suggested either theft or deliberate concealment, and its value hinted at a motive that could drive a man, or woman, to murder. Japp, meanwhile, had retrieved a small notebook from Wren's desk, its pages filled with cryptic shorthand. "Look at this, Poirot. Wren was planning to present the Chronos Veil at a horological exhibition in London next month. Says here it was nearly complete, but he needed one final component, a rare escapement from Vienna." Poirot's eyebrows rose. "Vienna, you say?" "And Mademoiselle Henshaw, she sought a Viennese regulator. A coincidence, perhaps, but Hercule Poirot does not believe in coincidences. He paced the workshop, his steps measured, his mind aligning the fragments of the case. The ledger's mention of a patent dispute pointed to Thorne, whose rivalry might have escalated to theft or worse. Miss Henshaw's obsession with rare clocks suggested a collector's greed, perhaps for the Chronos Veil itself. And Timothy, the eager apprentice, might have coveted his master's glory, seeking to claim the design as his own. "Inspector," Poirot said, pausing before the grandfather clock, "we must widen our net. The Chronos Veil is the key to this murder, but we must also understand Monsieur Wren's life. Who were his confidants? His enemies? We shall visit his home, and we shall speak to those who knew him best." Japp nodded, though his expression was skeptical. "Wren lived alone, from what I hear. No family, no close friends. Kept to himself except for his clocks." "Then the clocks, they shall speak for him," Poirot replied. He ran a finger along the grandfather clock's case, noting again the faint scratch near the keyhole. And this one, it has much to say. We must examine its mechanism more closely. A clock stopped at 11:47, yet the doctor estimates death at 8 o'clock. Why this discrepancy? Japp frowned. You think the killer tampered with it? Précisément, Poirot said. But to what end? To mislead us or to mark a moment of significance? We shall see. They left the shop, locking the door behind them, and made their way to Wren's modest cottage on the edge of the village. The mist had begun to lift, revealing the thatched roofs and stone walls of St. Mary's Mead. Wren's home was a reflection of his shop, orderly, unadorned, with clocks adorning every surface. A small study held a desk piled with correspondence, much of it from horological societies, praising Wren's innovations. One letter, however, caught Poirot's eye, a terse note from Reginald Thorne, dated a month prior, demanding a meeting to settle matters regarding a shared client. Thorne again, Japp said, peering over Poirot's shoulder. He's got a temper, that one. Poirot nodded, slipping the letter into his pocket. A temper, oui, but also a purpose. We must learn the nature of this shared client. In the kitchen, they found a tin of tea, its leaves matching the scent in the shop's spilled cup. Poirot sniffed the contents, detecting no trace of poison, but noted the tin's pristine condition. The poison, it was not in the tea leaves, but added to the cup. A precise act requiring proximity and trust. As they searched, Poirot's attention was drawn to a small photograph on the mantel, a younger Wren standing beside a man who bore a striking resemblance to Timothy Gale. Tiens, Poirot murmured. A family connection, perhaps? Japp shook his head. Gale said he's no relation. Just an apprentice Wren took on 2 years ago. Poirot's eyes narrowed. And yet, the resemblance is uncanny. We must inquire further. They returned to the village, the weight of the mystery settling over them like the mist. Poirot's mind churned, piecing together the fragments. The missing Chronos veil, the stopped clock, the poisoned tea, the patent dispute. Each suspect held a piece of the puzzle, but the picture remained incomplete. Inspector, Poirot said as they paused in the village square, we shall reconvene with our suspects tomorrow. But first, I wish to examine the grandfather clock's mechanism. Its silence is not merely a clue. It is a cry for justice. Japp sighed, but his respect for Poirot's methods was unwavering. Right then. Back to the shop at first light. But mark my words, Poirot. This case is as tangled as a ball of yarn. Poirot's smile was serene. And yet, even the most tangled yarn can be unraveled, mon ami, with patience and the little gray cells. As they parted, Poirot cast a final glance at the clock shop, its windows dark against the fading light. The Chronos veil was out there, hidden or stolen, and with it, the truth of Archibald Wren's death. The clocks might be silent, but Hercule Poirot was listening, and he would not rest until their secrets were laid bare. Chapter 4. The Rival's Alibi. The afternoon sun pierced the mist of St. Mary's Mead, casting a pale glow over the village square, where Reginald Thorne's clock shop stood in sharp contrast to Wren's pristine establishment. Thorne's shop was a cluttered affair, its windows smudged, its interior a jumble of half-repaired timepieces and dusty tools. The sign above the door, reading Thorne's Time Works, swung creakily in the breeze, as if protesting its own neglect. Hercule Poirot, his overcoat buttoned against the autumn chill, stepped inside with Inspector Japp at his side, the faint jingle of the shop bell announcing their arrival. The air within was thick with the scent of oil and old wood, and the ticking of clocks was less a symphony than a chaotic murmur, as if each timepiece vied for attention. Reginald Thorne stood behind a cluttered counter, polishing a silver pocket watch with a rag that looked none too clean. His sharp eyes flicked up at Poirot's entrance, and a guarded smile played on his lips. "Monsieur Poirot, Inspector," Thorne said, setting the watch aside. "I expected you'd come sniffing around." "What now? More accusations?" Poirot's mustache twitched as he surveyed the shop, noting the disorder that spoke of haste or distraction. "Accusations, Monsieur Thorne? None, merely questions. The truth, it is like a fine clock. It requires careful adjustment to run smoothly." Japp, less patient, leaned forward. "Let's have it, Thorne. You say you were here all evening when Wren was killed, but your assistant's conveniently in London, and no one else can vouch for you. That's a thin alibi." Thorne's smile tightened, but he held his ground. "Thin or not, it's the truth. I was working on a regulator clock. Tricky piece, took me hours. Jenkins left for London at noon, and I didn't step foot in Wren's shop. Why would I? The man was a nuisance, but I'm no murderer." Poirot's gaze drifted to a workbench in the corner, where a blueprint lay partially covered by a cloth. The edge of the paper bore intricate drawings, unmistakably similar to the style of Wren's Kronos Veil. He stepped closer, his cane tapping lightly on the floor, and lifted the cloth with a delicate hand. "This blueprint, Monsieur Thorne, it is most intriguing. A design of such complexity. Surely it is your own." Thorne's face flushed, and he moved swiftly to snatch the blueprint, rolling it up with a practiced hand. "That's mine, yes. A new escapement mechanism I've been developing. Nothing to do with Wren Poirot's eyes gleamed with quiet intensity. And yet, the lines, the annotations, they bear a striking resemblance to Monsieur Wren's work. A coincidence, perhaps, or something more. Borrowed?" Thorne's jaw clenched, his voice low and defensive. "Wren wasn't the only one with ideas, Poirot. I've been in this trade 30 years. If our designs look similar, it's because we both studied the same masters. You've no proof of anything else." Poirot inclined his head, his expression serene but unyielding. "Proof, monsieur, is like the tick of a clock. It comes in time. Tell me, when did you last discuss this similarity with Monsieur Wren?" Thorne hesitated, his fingers tightening around the rolled blueprint. "A month ago, perhaps. We had words about a client who wanted a custom piece. Wren claimed I'd copied his design to undercut him. Nonsense, of course. I told him to take his accusations elsewhere." Japp raised an eyebrow. "Sounds like a motive to me. A rival stealing your business, tarnishing your name. Enough to make a man angry." "Angry, yes," Thorne snapped, "but not mad enough to kill. I stayed here, worked late, and went home to bed. That's all there is to it." Poirot's gaze lingered on Thorne's hands, noting the faint tremor that betrayed his composure. "And this client, Monsieur Thorne? Who was it?" Thorne's eyes narrowed. "A gentleman from London, name of Carver. Wanted a clock with a hidden compartment. I bid for the job, but Wren got it. That's the last I heard of it." Poirot filed the name away, his mind already turning. "This, Monsieur Carver, he is a collector, oui? Like Mademoiselle Henshaw, perhaps?" Thorne shrugged, his tone dismissive. "Maybe. I don't keep tabs on my clients' hobbies. Now, if you've no more questions, I've work to do." Poirot smiled faintly, undeterred. "One final question, monsieur. Your assistant, Jenkins, when will he return from London to confirm your whereabouts?" Thorne's expression darkened. "Tomorrow, or the next day. He's visiting family. You can ask him yourself then." "Bien," Poirot said, adjusting his hat. "We shall do so. For now, I advise you to remain in the village. The truth, it has a way of catching up, like a clock that cannot be stopped." As they left the shop, Japp muttered under his breath, "Slippery as an eel, that one. You think he's hiding something?" Poirot's eyes twinkled. "Oh, oui, Inspector. Monsieur Thorne hides much, perhaps a stolen design, perhaps a darker deed. But we must tread carefully. The blueprint, it is a clue, but not yet evidence." They crossed the square, the mist now a faint haze under the strengthening sun. Poirot's thoughts returned to the grandfather clock in Wren's shop, its stopped hands a silent accusation. The blueprint in Thorne's possession suggested a rivalry deeper than mere words, but was it motive enough for murder? And what of this carver, the mysterious client who sought a clock with a hidden compartment? "Inspector," Poirot said, pausing by the village fountain, "we must learn more of this Monsieur Carver. A client who desires secrecy may have secrets of his own, and we must examine Monsieur Thorne's shop more closely, perhaps under the pretense of a second visit." Japp nodded, though his skepticism was evident. "You think he's got the Chronos veil stashed away somewhere?" Poirot's smile was enigmatic. "I think, my friend, that the Chronos veil is the heart of this mystery. Whether it is in Thorne's shop or elsewhere, it holds the key to Wren's death. But first, we must test the strength of his alibi. A man alone. In his shop is a man with opportunity. They made their way to the local inn, where Japp arranged for a constable to keep an eye on Thorne's movements. Poirot, meanwhile, requested a telegram be sent to London to inquire about Jenkins, Thorne's assistant. "A man who leaves for London at such a convenient moment," Poirot mused, "may have more to tell us than his master." As the day waned, Poirot returned to Wren's shop alone, drawn once more to the grandfather clock. He opened its door, peering into the intricate mechanism, his fingers tracing the gears with reverence. The scratch near the keyhole nagged at him, a blemish on an otherwise flawless creation. He tapped the wood gently, listening for any hollow sound, but found nothing. Yet the clock's silence spoke to him, a whisper of intent that he could not yet decipher. Standing back, Poirot clasped his hands behind him, his mind a whirl of possibilities. Thorne's blueprint suggested theft, but the locked room and poisoned tea required intimacy, precision. Could Thorne have slipped into Wren's shop, unseen, with a key or cunning? Or was the true culprit closer to Wren, someone who shared his tea and his trust? As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the shop, Poirot's resolve hardened. "You, mon ami," he said to the clock, "you guard a secret. But Hercule Poirot, he will find it, and the murderer who sought to silence you will face the tick of justice." He locked the shop and stepped into the evening, the village now quiet, save for the distant chime of a church bell. The mystery of Archibald Wren's death was a complex mechanism, but Poirot's little gray cells were already aligning its gears, ready to set the truth in motion. Chapter 5. The Customer's Obsession. The late afternoon light filtered through the tall windows of Henshaw Manor, casting intricate patterns on the polished oak floors, where clocks of every description adorned the walls. Their ceaseless ticking filled the grand drawing-room with a rhythmic pulse, as if the house itself were a living timepiece. Hercule Poirot, his overcoat draped neatly over his arm, stood in the center of the room, his keen eyes taking in the opulence of Miss Clara Henshaw's domain. The manor, perched on a hill overlooking St. Mary's Mead, was a testament to wealth and taste, its furnishings elegant yet overshadowed by the relentless presence of clocks, ormolu mantelpieces from Paris, delicate Viennese regulators, and a rare Dutch bracket clock that hummed with quiet precision. Miss Henshaw received Poirot and Inspector Japp with the composure of a hostess accustomed to command. She wore a dress of deep sapphire, its silk catching the light, and her auburn hair was pinned with a sapphire brooch that matched her eyes. Yet Poirot noted a subtle tension in her posture, a slight tightening of her fingers as she gestured for them to sit on a velvet settee. "Monsieur Poirot, Inspector," she said, her voice smooth but measured. "I trust you've come to discuss poor Mr. Wren's tragedy. I am at your disposal, though I assure you I know little beyond what I've already told." Poirot inclined his head, his mustache immaculate as ever. "Mademoiselle Henshaw, your cooperation is most appreciated. A tragedy such as this, it ripples through a village. No? And you, with your passion for clocks, were close to Monsieur Wren in matters of business. Perhaps you can shed light on his final days." Miss Henshaw's lips curved into a faint smile, though her eyes remained guarded. "Close in business, yes, but not in confidence. Mr. Wren was a genius, but reserved. I purchased many pieces from him. His craftsmanship was unparalleled. My visit to his shop yesterday was merely to inquire about a Viennese regulator I'd long admired." Japp, seated beside Poirot, flipped open his notebook. "You said you left before dusk, Miss Henshaw. Your housekeeper confirms you were home by 6, but that leaves plenty of time to pop back to the shop, doesn't it?" Her eyes flashed with indignation, though her tone remained cool. "Inspector, I am not in the habit of popping anywhere, least of all to a shop after hours. I was home, dining alone, as my staff will attest. I had no reason to return." Poirot's gaze drifted to her hands, noting a faint stain on the cuff of her dress, a brownish mark, barely visible, that could have been tea. "Mademoiselle," he said softly, "forgive the observation, but your sleeve, it bears a mark. Tea, perhaps, from your visit to Monsieur Wren's shop?" Miss Henshaw glanced at her cuff, her composure faltering for a fraction of a second. "This? From breakfast this morning, I expect. I'm not always as careful as I should be with my morning tea." She smoothed the fabric, her smile returning. "Surely you don't suspect me of tampering with Mr. Wren's cup?" Poirot's smile was enigmatic. "Suspicion, mademoiselle, is like a clock's spring. It must be wound carefully. But let us speak of this Viennese regulator. Monsieur Wren refused to sell it, you said. Was it perhaps the Chronos veil, his masterpiece?" Her eyes widened, a flicker of surprise betraying her calm. "The Chronos veil? I'd heard whispers of it, but Mr. Wren never confirmed its existence. He was secretive, as I said. If that was the regulator, he didn't offer it to me." Poirot leaned forward, his voice gentle but probing. "And yet, a collector such as yourself, with such a magnificent array," he gestured to the clocks surrounding them, "might desire such a piece above all others. A clock that hides a secret, it is a prize worth pursuing. Non?" Miss Henshaw's laugh was light, almost musical, but it rang hollow. "I collect for beauty and craftsmanship, Monsieur Poirot, not for secrets. If Mr. Wren had such a clock, he kept it from me. I left his shop disappointed but hardly desperate Jap, growing impatient, tapped his pencil against his notebook. Look here, Miss Henshaw. Wren's ledger shows you spent a small fortune on his clocks. You were there often. Did you ever see anything odd? Anyone lurking about or Wren acting strange? She tilted her head, considering. He was more withdrawn of late, perhaps. Distracted. Once, when I visited, he was arguing with young Timothy, something about a sketchbook. I didn't catch the details, but Mr. Wren seemed cross. Poirot's eyes gleamed. A sketchbook, you say? Most interesting. And did you notice, mademoiselle, any visitors to the shop who seemed out of place? She hesitated, her fingers brushing the sapphire brooch. There was a man, once, about a month ago. A stranger, well-dressed, with a London accent. He spoke to Mr. Wren about a custom order, but they went to the back room, and I heard no more. Monsieur Carver, perhaps? Poirot suggested, recalling Thorne's mention of the client. Miss Henshaw's brow furrowed. I didn't catch his name, but Mr. Wren seemed agitated after he left. That's all I know. Poirot nodded, his mind cataloging the detail. A London client, a custom order, a hidden compartment. The threads were weaving together, but the pattern remained elusive. He rose, his movements precise, and paced the room, pausing before a particularly ornate clock with a gilded face. Its mechanism ticked with a soft, hypnotic rhythm, and Poirot's fingers traced its edge as if seeking inspiration in its precision. Mademoiselle, he said, turning to her, your collection, it is a marvel. But a passion such as yours, it can consume, no? To possess a clock like the Chronos Veil, might it not tempt one to act beyond reason? Her gaze hardened, though her voice remained steady. I am a collector, Monsieur Poirot, not a fanatic. I admired Mr. Wren's work, but I would never harm him for it. I trust you'll find the true culprit elsewhere. Poirot bowed slightly, his expression unreadable. I trust, mademoiselle, that the truth will not remain hidden long. We shall speak again. As they left the manor, Jap muttered under his breath. She's a cool one, Poirot. That tea stain? Think it's from Wren's shop? Poirot's eyes twinkled. It is possible, Inspector, but we must not leap to conclusions. The stain? It is a clue, but not yet a conviction. We must learn more of this Monsieur Carver and his custom order. And the sketchbook. Why did it anger Monsieur Wren? They walked down the manor's drive, the ticking of clocks fading behind them. Poirot's thoughts turned to the grandfather clock in Wren's shop, its stopped hands a silent challenge. Miss Henshaw's composure was formidable, but the flicker of surprise at the mention of the Chronos Veil had not escaped him. Was her passion for clocks merely aesthetic, or did it conceal a deeper obsession? Inspector, Poirot said, pausing by the village lane, we must inquire about this stranger from London. A man who seeks a clock with a hidden compartment may have motives that align with murder, and we must revisit young Timothy. His sketchbook, it seems, holds secrets of its own. Jap nodded, though his expression was weary. You're seeing connections everywhere, Poirot. But how do we crack a locked room and a poisoned cup with no witnesses? Poirot's smile was serene. By listening, mon ami. The clocks, they speak, even in their silence. And Hercule Poirot, he listens with the little gray cells. As they made their way back to the village, the manor's clocks chimed the hour, a chorus of precision that echoed in Poirot's mind. The Chronos Veil was out there, its absence a shadow over the case, and with it lay the truth of Archibald Wren's death. The gears of justice were turning, and Poirot would not rest until they struck the hour of revelation. Chapter 6. The Apprentice's Secret. The dusk settled over Saint. Mary's Mead, like a soft gray cloak, muting the village's colors and lending an air of quiet expectancy to its narrow lanes. Hercule Poirot, his cane tapping rhythmically on the cobblestones, made his way to the modest cottage where Timothy Gale, the apprentice of the late Archibald Wren, resided. The cottage stood at the village's edge, its thatched roof sagging slightly, its windows glowing faintly with lamplight. Inspector Japp trudged beside Poirot, his mood as overcast as the evening sky, his notebook clutched like a talisman against the mystery's complexity. "This lad, Timothy," Japp grumbled. "He's nervous as a cat, but is he our man? All this talk of clocks and secrets is making my head spin." Poirot's mustache curved in a faint smile. "Patience, mon ami. The head, it spins when the puzzle is intricate, but the little gray cells, they find order in the chaos. Young Monsieur Gale, he holds a piece of this enigma, perhaps the most crucial one." They knocked, and the door creaked open to reveal Timothy, his lanky frame silhouetted against the dim light of a single lamp. His brown hair was disheveled, his eyes shadowed with fatigue or fear, or both. He stepped aside, gesturing them into a cramped parlor where a small fire crackled in the hearth. The room was sparse, its furnishings worn, but a workbench in the corner was littered with clock parts, gears, springs, and a half-assembled pocket watch that gleamed with promise. "Monsieur Gale," Poirot began, settling into a creaking chair with the grace of a man accustomed to command. "We meet again, and this time I seek the truth behind your master's work. You were his apprentice, oui? His confidant in the art of horology?" Timothy nodded, his hands twisting a rag stained with oil. "Yes, sir. Mr. Wren taught me everything, how to balance a wheel, set an escapement, polish a case. He was particular, but I learned fast." Poirot's eyes, sharp as a jeweler's loop, studied the young man's face. "Particular, you say? And yet Mademoiselle Henshaw mentioned an argument, one concerning a sketchbook. Tell me, what was this dispute?" Timothy's face paled, his fingers tightening on the rag. "It was nothing, really. Mr. Wren caught me sketching some designs, ideas I had for a clock. He thought I was copying his work, but I wasn't. I was just experimenting." Poirot leaned forward, his voice soft but insistent. "Experimenting, Monsieur Gale? Or perhaps admiring your master's genius a little too closely? The Chronos veil, it was his masterpiece, non? Did you ever see its design?" Timothy's eyes darted to the workbench, then back to Poirot. "No, sir. He kept it locked away in that box you found. He'd work on it alone, late at night. I only heard him talk about it, said it would change horology forever." Japp, standing by the hearth, interjected. "Change horology, eh? Sounds like something worth stealing. Or killing." For Timothy flinched, his voice rising. "I didn't steal anything, and I'd never hurt Mr. Wren. He was good to me, gave me a chance when no one else would." Poirot's gaze drifted to the workbench, where a leather-bound sketchbook lay half-hidden beneath a pile of tools. He rose, his movements deliberate, and approached the bench, brushing aside a screwdriver to reveal the book. "This, Monsieur Gale, is it the sketchbook that caused such discord?" Timothy's breath hitched, and he moved as if to snatch the book, then stopped himself. "It's just my drawing, sir. Nothing special. May I?" Poirot asked, his tone polite but unyielding. Without waiting for permission, he opened the sketchbook, revealing pages filled with intricate diagrams, gears, escapements, and a design strikingly similar to the Kronos Veil blueprint found in Wren's shop. The lines were meticulous, the annotations in a hand that mimicked Wren's own, down to the flourish of his initials. "Tiens," Poirot murmured, holding up a page. "These are not mere experiments, Monsieur Gale. They are copies, precise and deliberate. Did you hope to claim this design as your own?" Timothy's face crumpled, his voice barely a whisper. I wanted to understand it. Mr. Wren wouldn't share the Kronos Veil with me, said I wasn't ready. I thought if I could recreate it, I could prove myself." Japp stepped forward, his eyes narrowing. "Prove yourself or sell it for a fortune? A design like that could make a lad like you rich. No." Timothy protested, his hands trembling. "I just wanted to be like him. He was a genius, and I'm nothing without his teaching." Poirot closed the sketchbook, his expression unreadable. "Ambition, Monsieur Gale. It is a fire that warms or burns. Did your ambition lead you to betray your master? To slip something into his tea, perhaps, to ensure your secret remained safe?" Timothy's eyes filled with tears, and he shook his head vehemently. "I swear, I didn't touch his tea. I locked up at 6, like I said, and went home. I'd never hurt him." Poirot's gaze softened, but his voice held a steely edge. "And yet, your sketchbook tells a different story. A man who copies his master's work may also covet his glory. Where is the Kronos Veil now, Monsieur Gale? Did you take it?" Timothy's voice broke. "I don't know where it is. I never saw it finished. Mr. Wren kept it hidden, even from me." Poirot placed the sketchbook on the workbench, his fingers lingering on its cover. "We shall keep this for now, to examine further. And you, Monsieur Gale, you will remain in the village. The truth, it is like a clock's pendulum. It swings until it finds balance." As they left the cottage, Japp clutched the sketchbook under his arm, his expression grim. "That lad's hiding something, Poirot. Those drawings, too close to Wren's for comfort. Think he's our poisoner?" Poirot's eyes gleamed in the fading light. "He is afraid, Inspector, and fear is a powerful motivator. But we must not rush to judgment. The Kronos Veil is missing, and its absence is the heart of this mystery. Timothy's ambition is a thread, but is it the one that leads to murder?" They walked back toward the village, the air growing cooler as stars began to prick the sky. Poirot's thoughts churned, aligning the fragments of the case. The stopped grandfather clock, the poisoned tea, the missing Kronos Veil, and now Timothy's damning sketchbook. The apprentice's fear suggested guilt, but was it the guilt of a murderer or merely a thief of ideas? "Inspector," Poirot said, pausing by a stone wall, "we must learn more of this Kronos Veil, its purpose, its value. Why would someone kill for it? And we must trace this Monsieur Carver, the London client. His shadow looms over this case." Japp nodded, though his skepticism was evident. "Carver's a ghost so far. No one in the village knows him, and Thorne's assistant hasn't sent word back from London yet." "Then we shall seek him out," Poirot replied. "And we shall examine the grandfather clock once more. Its stopped hands, they mock us, but they also point to the truth." As they reached the village square, the clock shop's dark windows stared back like unblinking eyes. Poirot's mind returned to the scratch near the clock's keyhole, a detail that nagged at his sense of order. Was it a mark of tampering or merely a craftsman's oversight? And the Chronos veil, was it hidden in Timothy's cottage, or had another hand spirited it away? "Tomorrow, mon ami," Poirot said, his voice resolute, "we shall unravel another thread. The clocks of St. Mary's Mead may be silent, but Hercule Poirot, he hears their whispers." Japp sighed, but his trust in Poirot's methods was unwavering. "Right then. First light, we're back at the shop, but I'll wager this case gets murkier before it." Clear's Poirot's smile was serene. "Murkier, perhaps, but every shadow leads to light. The little gray cells, they are never idle." As they parted, the village settled into night, the silence broken only by the distant hoot of an owl. The mystery of Archibald Wren's death was a delicate mechanism, its gears hidden but turning. Poirot would not rest until he had set them right, exposing the hand that had stopped time itself. Chapter 7. The Poisoned Cup. The morning dawned crisp over St. Mary's Mead, the mist having retreated to reveal a sky of pale blue, streaked with wisps of cloud. Hercule Poirot, his overcoat buttoned against the autumn chill, stood once more in the silent confines of Wren's clock shop, where the air still held the faint, bitter trace of cyanide. The grandfather clock, its hands frozen at 11:47, loomed over the room like a sentinel guarding a secret. Inspector Japp, his face etched with the weariness of a case that refused to yield, stood by the counter, examining the shattered remnants of the porcelain teacup that had held Archibald Wren's final sip. "Poison in the tea, Poirot," Japp said, holding up a fragment of the cup, its delicate floral pattern marred by cracks. "The doctor's sure it's cyanide, quick, deadly, and no mistake. But how'd it get there? No one was seen entering or leaving, and the shop was locked tighter than a drum." Poirot's green eyes gleamed as he approached the counter, his gloved fingers delicately lifting another shard of the cup. He held it to the light, noting the absence of fingerprints, save for Wren's own, smudged faintly along the handle. "The cup, it tells a story, Inspector. It was held by Monsieur Wren, oui, but the poison, it was placed with care by one who knew his habits." Japp frowned, setting the fragment down. "You're saying someone got close enough to slip cyanide into his tea without him noticing? That's no small feat." "Précisément," Poirot replied, his voice soft but resolute. "The act, it requires intimacy, trust, or cunning. We must examine the tea itself and the means by which it was prepared." He moved to the small alcove behind the counter, where a kettle sat on a gas ring, its surface cold to the touch. Beside it was a teapot, its spout clean, its interior free of any residue that might suggest tampering. Poirot opened the lid, sniffing the faint aroma of dried leaves within. "The tea leaves, they are untainted, I think. The poison, it was not in the pot, but in the cup. A precise delivery." Japp scratched his head. So the killer had to be here, in the shop, when Wren was making his tea. But the doors were locked, and the windows bolted. "It's impossible." Poirot's mustache twitched with a faint smile. "Impossible, mon ami." "No, merely improbable. The locked room, it is a puzzle, but not insoluble. We must consider the key, the one missing from its hook by the back door." Japp's eyes narrowed. "You think someone used it to get in, then put it back to throw us off?" Poirot nodded, his gaze drifting to the back door, its heavy oak unmarred by signs of force. "A key, it is a silent accomplice. Monsieur Wren kept one, oui, and young Timothy claims another was always on the hook. Yet, when we arrived, it was there, gleaming as if newly polished. Curious, non? He approached the door, examining the lock with a jeweler's precision. The keyhole showed no scratches, no signs of tampering, but Poirot's keen eyes noted a faint smudge of oil on the handle, barely visible. Someone touched this door, Inspector, and recently. Not to break in, perhaps, but to enter, or to leave. Japp followed, peering at the smudge. Oil, eh? Like what you'd find on a clockmaker's hands. Points to Timothy, or maybe Thorn. Or another, Poirot said, his tone enigmatic. We must not assume too quickly. Let us return to the tea. He knelt beside the counter, where the spilled tea had dried into a dark stain on the ledger. The bitter scent of cyanide lingered, a ghostly reminder of the crime. Poirot's fingers traced the edge of the stain, noting its irregular spread, as if the cup had been knocked over in a moment of surprise or struggle. Monsieur Wren, he was drinking his tea at 8, as was his habit. Yet the clock, it was stopped at 11:47. Why this discrepancy? Japp shrugged. To confuse us, maybe? Make us think he died later? Poirot's eyes gleamed. Oui, but it is a clumsy deception. The doctor places death at 8 based on the body's condition. The stopped clock, it is a deliberate act, but not to hide the time of death. Rather, to point us elsewhere. We must ask, who had the opportunity to poison the tea, and who had the means to stop the clock? He rose, his attention drawn to a small shelf above the counter, where a tin of tea sat beside a box of sugar cubes. He opened the tin, confirming the leaves matched those in Wren's cottage, then examined the sugar, sniffing carefully. No poison here, I think. The cyanide, it was likely in a form that could be added quickly, a powder perhaps, or a liquid carried in a vial. Japp's brow furrowed. So the killer had to be someone Wren trusted enough to let them near his tea. Timothy was here until 6, but he says Wren was alone after that. Miss Henshaw was home by then, and Thorn claims he was in his own shop. Poirot paced the shop, his steps measured, his mind aligning the fragments of the puzzle. Each suspect, they had access to this shop at some point. Timothy, with his key and his daily presence. Mademoiselle Henshaw, with her frequent visits and her collector's zeal. Monsieur Thorn, with his rivalry and his proximity across the square. But the poison, it requires more than access. It requires a moment of distraction. He paused before the grandfather clock, its towering presence a silent challenge. Opening its door, he peered again at the mechanism, his fingers brushing the gears. The scratch near the keyhole, noted earlier, seemed to pulse with significance. This clock, Inspector, it was stopped with purpose. Not wound down, but halted by hand. We must discover why Japp, growing impatient, gestured to the shop. We've searched this place top to bottom, Poirot. No vials, no poison, no hidden keys. Just that blasted clock and a dead man. Poirot's smile was serene. And yet, the absence of evidence, it is itself a clue. The killer, they were careful. Too careful, perhaps. We must look beyond the shop to the lives of our suspects. The Chronos veil, it is missing, and its absence is the shadow over this crime. He turned to Japp, his voice resolute. We shall send samples of the tea and cup to the laboratory to confirm the cyanide. And we shall inquire further into this Monsieur Carver, the London client. His desire for a clock with a hidden compartment, it is no coincidence. Japp nodded, jotting a note. I'll get the constable on it. But what about the clock? You keep circling back to it. Because it speaks, mon ami, Poirot replied, his eyes fixed on the grandfather clock. Its silence is not natural, but a cry for attention. We shall examine its mechanism more closely, with the aid of a horologist, perhaps. There is something within it, I am certain. A secret it guards. As they prepared to leave, Poirot lingered by the counter, his gaze falling on a small brass tool, its tip fine as a needle, lying among the debris of Wren's work. He picked it up, turning it in his gloved fingers. "This tool, Inspector, it is for delicate work, oui? The kind used to adjust a clock's heart. We must ask Timothy if it was his or his master's." Japp sighed, but his trust in Poirot's instincts held firm. "Right, then. Laboratory tests, Carver, and another go at that clock. But I'm telling you, Poirot, this case is like trying to wind a clock with no key." Poirot's eyes twinkled. "And yet the key exists, Inspector. It is hidden, but Hercule Poirot, he will find it. The poisoned cup, the stopped clock, they are the gears of this mystery, and we shall set them turning." As they stepped into the morning light, the village bustled quietly around them, oblivious to the dark riddle at its heart. Poirot's mind was a whirl of details: the smudge of oil on the door, the missing key, the deliberate stopping of the clock. The Chronos veil remained elusive, but its shadow loomed large, and with it, the truth of Archibald Wren's murder. The little gray cells were at work, and Poirot would not rest until the final tick revealed the killer's hand. Chapter 8. The Clock's Whisper. The pale light of early afternoon filtered through the misted windows of Wren's clock shop, casting long shadows across the silent timepieces that lined its walls. Hercule Poirot stood before the grandfather clock, its towering walnut case a mute guardian of the mystery that enveloped Saint Mary's Mead. The clock's hands, frozen at 11:47, seemed to mock the passage of time, their stillness a deliberate act that gnawed at Poirot's sense of order. Inspector Japp, his patience fraying like an old rope, paced the shop, his boots scuffing the polished floor as he awaited the arrival of a local horologist summoned to aid their investigation. "Blast it, Poirot," Japp said, pausing to glare at the clock. "We've got a poisoned cup, a locked room, and a missing masterpiece. And you're fixated on this clock. What's it going to tell us? Point to the killer with its hands." Poirot's mustache twitched with a faint smile, his green eyes gleaming with quiet certainty. "Patience, mon ami. The clock, it is not merely a witness, but a conspirator in this crime. Its silence, it whispers a truth we have yet to hear. We must listen closely." The shop door jingled, admitting Mr. Harold Pym, a bespectacled horologist from a neighboring village, whose wiry frame and ink-stained fingers marked him as a man of precision. He carried a leather case of tools, his expression one of cautious curiosity, as Japp explained the task: to examine the grandfather clock for any anomalies that might shed light on Wren's murder. "Mr. Wren's work was exceptional," Pym said, adjusting his spectacles as he approached the clock. "This piece, a Howard and Davis model, modified by Wren himself, is a marvel. To stop it deliberately is sacrilege." Poirot nodded, his hands clasped behind his back. "Sacrilege, oui, but also a clue. Monsieur Pym, I ask you to examine its mechanism with care. There is a scratch near the keyhole, and I suspect a hidden purpose within Pym opened the clock's door, revealing a labyrinth of gears and weights, their brass surfaces gleaming despite their stillness. He worked methodically, his tools clinking softly as he probed the mechanism. Poirot watched, his eyes missing nothing, while Japp hovered, muttering about the futility of chasing mechanical ghosts. After several minutes, Pym paused, his fingers brushing a small panel behind the pendulum. "Well, now," he said, his voice tinged with surprise. "There's something here, a compartment, cleverly concealed." Poirot leaned forward, his heart quickening. "A compartment, you say? Open it, if you please." Pym pressed gently, and a small panel clicked open, revealing a narrow recess within the clock's frame. Inside lay a single brass gear, its edge engraved with the initials AW, identical to the one found in Wren's locked box. The compartment was otherwise empty, its walls smooth and unmarred. "Mon Dieu," Poirot murmured, lifting the gear with gloved fingers. "This is no ordinary clock, Inspector. It was designed to hide something, perhaps the Chronos veil itself or a piece of it." Japp's eyes widened. "You think Wren stashed his masterpiece in there?" "But it's empty, now." "Empty, oui, but not without purpose," Poirot replied. "The killer, they knew of this compartment, or they suspected it. The scratch near the keyhole, it suggests tampering, a hurried attempt to access this secret." Pym, still peering into the mechanism, shook his head. The clock was stopped manually, no doubt about it. The escapement was disengaged, not broken. Someone with skill did this, someone who knew clocks. Poirot's gaze sharpened. "Someone like Monsieur Timothy Gale, perhaps? Or Monsieur Thorne, with his rival's expertise?" Japp nodded, his expression grim. "Or even Miss Henshaw. She's got the money to hire someone with the know-how." Poirot turned to the counter, where the shattered teacup still lay, its fragments a stark reminder of the poison that had ended Wren's life. "The clock and the cup, they are linked, Inspector. The poison was administered at 8, yet the clock was stopped at 11:47. This discrepancy, it is the killer's mistake. A false timeline meant to mislead." He paced the shop, his steps measured, his mind a whirl of connections. The hidden compartment suggested Wren had guarded a secret, likely the Chronos veil or its plans. The stopped clock pointed to a deliberate act, not to mark the time of death, but to obscure it. And the poison, slipped into the tea, required intimacy or stealth, qualities any of the suspects might possess. "We must gather them, Inspector," Poirot said, his voice resolute. "Monsieur Thorne, Mademoiselle Henshaw, and young Timothy, here, in this shop, where the clock can watch them." Japp raised an eyebrow. "You're going to confront them now?" "We've got no hard evidence, Poirot, just a gear and a hunch." Poirot's smile was serene. "Evidence, mon ami, is like a clock's chime. It rings when the hour is right. Bring them, and we shall see what truths the clock's whisper reveals." An hour later, the shop was crowded with the three suspects, their faces a study in unease. Reginald Thorne stood by the door, his arms crossed, his sharp eyes defiant. Clara Henshaw sat primly on a stool, her sapphire brooch glinting, her composure a polished mask. Timothy Gale hovered near the workbench, his hands fidgeting, his gaze darting to the grandfather clock, as if it might accuse him directly. Poirot stood before the clock, his presence commanding the room's attention. "Mes amis," he began, his voice calm but piercing, "we stand in the heart of a mystery. Monsieur Wren, he was poisoned, his tea laced with cyanide. His shop, locked from within, offers no easy answers. And this clock," he gestured to the towering timepiece, "it was stopped at 11:47, yet death came at 8. Why? To deceive us, or to point to a truth?" Thorne snorted, his tone sharp. "You're wasting our time, Poirot. I was in my shop, as I told you. I've no interest in Wren's clocks or his tea." Miss Henshaw's voice was cool. "Nor I, monsieur," Poirot. I was home, dining, when this tragedy occurred. I collect clocks, not poisons. Timothy's voice trembled. I locked up and left. I didn't touch the clock or his tea, I swear. Poirot raised a hand, silencing them. Each of you had reason to wish Monsieur Wren harm. Monsieur Thorne, your rivalry and the blueprint in your shop suggest theft of ideas. Mademoiselle Henshaw, your passion for clocks and the stain of tea on your sleeve hint at a closer connection to this crime. And Monsieur Gale, your sketchbook, filled with copies of your master's work, speaks of ambition that may have turned deadly. He turned to the clock, opening its door to reveal the hidden compartment. This clock, it held a secret, a gear, engraved with Monsieur Wren's initials. The Chronos veil. It was meant to be hidden here, or something of equal value. Who among you knew of this compartment? The suspects exchanged glances, their silence heavy. Thorne's jaw tightened, Miss Henshaw's fingers stilled on her brooch, and Timothy's face drained of color. Poirot's eyes gleamed. The clock, it whispers, and its whisper is this. One of you stopped it to conceal the hour of death. One of you poisoned the tea, knowing Monsieur Wren's habits. And one of you sought the Chronos veil, for glory, for wealth, or for revenge. He paused, letting the weight of his words settle. Tomorrow, we shall continue our inquiries. But know this, the truth, it cannot be silenced forever. The little gray cells, they hear the clock's whisper, and they will not rest. As the suspects filed out, their faces etched with unease, Japp approached Poirot, his voice low. You've rattled them, Poirot, but we're no closer to an arrest. That compartment's a find, but it's empty. What now? Poirot's gaze lingered on the clock. Now, Inspector, we follow the trail of Monsieur Carver, the London client. And we search Timothy's cottage again. The Chronos veil may yet be there. The clock has spoken, but its final secret remains. As they locked the shop, the village settled into dusk, the air heavy with unanswered questions. Poirot's mind churned, the gears of the case aligning, the hidden compartment, the false timeline, the missing masterpiece. The truth was close, a whisper on the edge of hearing, and Hercule Poirot would not rest until it rang clear. Chapter 9. The Web of Motives. The evening draped Saint Mary's Mead in a soft twilight, the village's lamps casting a warm glow on the cobblestones, as Hercule Poirot and Inspector Japp made their way to the local inn, the Three Crowns. The air was crisp, carrying the faint scent of wood smoke and damp earth, a reminder of autumn's steady advance. Inside the inn, the murmur of patrons and the clink of glasses provided a stark contrast to the silent tension of Wren's clock shop. Poirot, his overcoat neatly folded over his arm, settled into a corner booth, his green eyes reflecting the flickering light of a candle as he contemplated the intricate puzzle before them. Japp, nursing a pint of ale, leaned across the table, his voice low. You stirred them up good and proper back there, Poirot. Thorne's bristling, Miss Henshaw's cool as ice, and young Timothy looks ready to bolt. But we're still fishing in the dark, no hard evidence to pin the poison or the clock on any of them. Poirot's mustache twitched, a faint smile playing at his lips. The dark, mon ami, is where the stars shine brightest. We have threads, motives, opportunities, secrets, and now we must weave them into a tapestry that reveals the truth. The Chronos veil, the stopped clock, the poisoned tea. These are not separate, but part of a single mechanism. He drew a small notebook from his pocket, its pages filled with his meticulous script, and began to outline the web of motives that bound their suspects. Let us consider, Inspector, what we know. Monsieur Thorne, he is driven by rivalry. The blueprint in his shop, so like Monsieur Wren's, suggests he coveted the Kronos veil or sought to claim its glory. His alibi, it is weak, resting on an absent assistant who has yet to return from London. Japp nodded, taking a sip of his ale. Thorne's got the skill to tamper with that clock, too. And that patent dispute in Wren's ledger sounds like bad blood turned worse. Oui, Poirot agreed, his pen tapping the notebook. But we must not forget Mademoiselle Henshaw. Her passion for clocks, it is more than aesthetic, it is a hunger. The tea stain on her sleeve, it may be innocent, yet it places her closer to the crime than she admits. And her mention of this Monsieur Carver, the London client, why did she recall him so vaguely, unless to conceal a connection? Japp's brow furrowed. You think she's hiding something about Carver? Maybe she wanted the Kronos veil bad enough to kill for it. Poirot's eyes gleamed. It is possible. A collector's obsession can burn fiercely, non? And then there is young Timothy Gale. His sketchbook, filled with copies of Wren's designs, betrays an ambition that outstripped his loyalty. He had access to the shop, to the tea, to the clock. His fear, it is palpable. A fear of exposure, perhaps, or of something darker. Japp set down his glass, his expression grim. That sketchbook's damning, Poirot. If Timothy was stealing Wren's designs, he'd have reason to silence him before he was found out. But poison? That's cold, even for a lad with big dreams. Poirot leaned back, his fingers steepled. Cold, oui, but precise. The cyanide, it was not a random choice. It is quick, traceless, requiring only a moment to administer. The killer knew Monsieur Wren's habit of taking tea at 8, and they knew the shop's rhythms. This points to someone close, someone who could act without arousing suspicion. He paused, his gaze drifting to the inn's hearth, where flames danced like the gears of his mind. And the clock, Inspector, the stopped clock at 11:47. It is not a mistake, but a message. The killer wished to mislead us, to suggest a later hour of death. Yet the doctor's report is clear. Monsieur Wren died near 8. Why this charade? To create an alibi, perhaps, or to obscure the true moment of the crime. Japp rubbed his chin. So we're looking for someone who was in the shop at 8, slipped the poison into the tea, and then stopped the clock hours later. But how'd they get in and out with the place locked? Poirot's smile was enigmatic. The locked room, it is a puzzle, but not impenetrable. The key on the hook, it was polished. Oui? As if recently used and returned. And the smudge of oil on the back door, it suggests a clockmaker's hand, or one familiar with their tools. We must consider how the killer entered, perhaps with a key, perhaps through cunning. He opened his notebook, sketching a timeline of the evening of Wren's death. At 6, Timothy claims he locked up and left. Mademoiselle Henshaw was home by then, dining alone. Monsieur Thorne says he was in his shop, alone. Yet one of them was here, in this shop, at 8, when the tea was poured and poisoned. Japp leaned forward, his voice urgent. What about this Carver fellow? He's a ghost, no one's seen him, and we've got no word from London yet. Could he be the key? Poirot nodded, his pen circling Carver's name. Monsieur Carver, he is a shadow in this case, but a significant one. His desire for a clock with a hidden compartment aligns with the Kronos veil. We must find him, Inspector, and learn what he sought, and whether he was willing to kill for it. The inn's door swung open, admitting a constable who approached with a telegram. Jap took it, his eyes scanning the text. "It's from London." Thorne's assistant, Jenkins, confirms he left at noon on the day of the murder, but says Thorne was alone in the shop when he left. No help there. Poirot's eyes narrowed. And yet, it confirms Monsieur Thorne's opportunity. A man alone, with no witnesses, is free to move. We must press him further, and we must search his shop again for the Kronos veil or traces of it. He rose, adjusting his hat with precision. Tomorrow, we shall confront our suspects once more, but with new questions. The hidden compartment in the clock, it was empty, but it tells us Monsieur Wren guarded a secret. The Kronos veil. It is the heart of this crime, and we must find it. Jap drained his ale, his expression weary but resolute. And the poison? We've got the lab results coming, but I'm betting they'll just confirm cyanide. We need more, Poirot. Something solid. Poirot's smile was serene. Solid, mon ami? The truth, it is like a clock's balance wheel. It oscillates until it finds equilibrium. We shall return to the shop, to the clock, and to the lives of our suspects. The web of motives, it tightens, and soon the spider will be caught. As they left the inn, the village was hushed, its lamps casting pools of light on the cobblestones. Poirot's mind churned, weaving the threads of the case. Thorne's rivalry, Henshaw's obsession, Timothy's ambition, and the elusive Carver, whose shadow loomed ever larger. The grandfather clock's whisper echoed in his thoughts, its stopped hands pointing not just to a time, but to a truth. The Kronos veil was out there, hidden or stolen, and with it, the key to Archibald Wren's murder. Poirot's little gray cells were relentless, and the hour of revelation was drawing near. Chapter 10. The Apprentice's Confession. The morning light crept into Saint. Mary's mead, with a tentative glow, as if reluctant to disturb the secrets that lingered in the village's quiet lanes. Hercule Poirot, his overcoat immaculate despite the early hour, stood once more in the shadowed interior of Wren's clock shop, where the air was heavy with the memory of death. The grandfather clock, its hands still frozen at 11:47, seemed to watch him with silent accusation, its hidden compartment a tantalizing clue that had yet to yield its full meaning. Inspector Jap, his face lined with the strain of a case that twisted like a labyrinth, stood by the counter, clutching a telegram that had arrived from London overnight. "Still no trace of this Carver chap," Jap said, his voice gruff with frustration. "The London police checked the address Thorne gave us. Nothing but a vacant office. Either he's a ghost or someone's covering their tracks." Poirot's green eyes gleamed, his mustache twitching with a faint smile. "A ghost, mon ami? Non, merely a shadow we have yet to illuminate. Monsieur Carver, he is a piece of this puzzle, but today we focus on another thread, one that trembles with fear." He gestured toward the door where a constable was ushering in Timothy Gale, the apprentice. The young man's lanky frame was hunched, his eyes red-rimmed and shadowed, as if sleep had fled from him. His hands, stained with the ink and oil of his trade, fidgeted nervously, and his gaze darted to the grandfather clock before settling on the floor. "Monsieur Gale," Poirot began, his voice gentle but unyielding. "We meet again, and this time I sense you carry a burden. The Kronos veil, the stopped clock, the poisoned tea. These are not mere mysteries, but a web that entangles you. Will you speak, or shall the little gray cells unravel your secret for you?" Timothy's face paled, his voice barely a whisper. I've told you everything, sir. I locked up at 6, went home, and didn't come back. I didn't touch Mr. Wren's tea or his clock. Poirot stepped closer, his presence commanding despite his small stature. And yet, your sketchbook, it tells a different tale. Designs that mirror your master's Chronos veil, copies so precise they could deceive a horologist's eye. You sought to claim his glory? None? To present his masterpiece as your own? Timothy's hands clenched, his voice cracking. I didn't want to steal it. I wanted to be like him. Mr. Wren was a genius, and I was nobody. I thought if I could understand the Chronos veil, I could prove I was worthy. Jap, leaning against the counter, snorted. Worthy? Or rich? A clock like that could fetch a fortune, lad. Enough to tempt anyone to silence their master. Timothy's eyes filled with tears, and he shook his head vehemently. I didn't kill him. I swear it. I'd never hurt Mr. Wren. He was like a father to me. Poirot's gaze softened, but his tone remained relentless. A father, you say, yet you betrayed his trust with your sketches. And the clock stopped at 11:47. Why? To hide the hour of his death, perhaps. To protect your secret? Timothy's breath hitched, and he sank onto a stool, his hands covering his face. I didn't mean for any of this. I was scared, that's all. Scared he'd find out. Poirot's eyes narrowed, sensing the crack in the young man's defenses. Find out what, Monsieur Gale? Speak now, and let the truth set you free. The room fell silent, save for the faint creak of the shop's timbers settling. Timothy's shoulders shook, and when he looked up, his face was a mask of anguish. I took the designs, he whispered, his voice breaking. Not the Chronos veil itself, but the plans. I copied them, thought I could sell them to a dealer in London. Mr. Wren caught me sketching one night, and he was furious. Said he'd expose me, ruin me. I couldn't let that happen. Jap stepped forward, his voice sharp. So you poisoned his tea? Slipped in the cyanide when he wasn't looking? Timothy's eyes widened in horror. No, I didn't poison him, but I did stop the clock. He swallowed hard, tears streaming down his cheeks. After I left at 6, I came back around 8. I used the spare key from the hook. I knew where it was kept. Mr. Wren was already gone. Slumped over the counter, the tea spilled. I panicked. I thought if I stopped the clock later, it'd look like he died after I was gone, so no one would suspect me. Poirot's mustache twitched, his mind racing. You returned at 8, you say, and found him dead. Yet you did not call for help? I was terrified, Timothy sobbed. I thought they'd blame me, with the sketches and all. I stopped the clock at 11:47 to make it look like it happened later, then locked up and left. I didn't know what else to do. Poirot's gaze was piercing, his voice steady. And the Chronos veil? Where is it, Monsieur Gale? Did you take it to conceal your theft? Timothy shook his head, his voice barely audible. I don't know where it is. I never saw it finished. Mr. Wren kept it hidden, even from me. Jap crossed his arms, his expression skeptical. Convenient story, lad. You admit to sneaking, back, tampering with the clock, but you expect us to believe you didn't touch the tea? Poirot raised a hand, silencing Jap. One moment, Inspector. Monsieur Gale, you say you found Monsieur Wren dead at 8, the tea spilled. Did you see anything else? A vial, perhaps, or another person? Timothy wiped his eyes, his voice trembling. No, sir. Just him and the cup on the floor. I didn't touch anything except the clock. I swear it. Poirot paced slowly, his cane tapping the floor, his mind aligning the new revelation with the case's fragments. Timothy's confession explained the stopped clock, but the poison remained a mystery. The cyanide, slipped into the tea, required a hand more cunning than a panicked apprentice's, and the Chronos veil, still missing, was the pivot around which the crime turned. "Inspector," Poirot said, turning to Japp, "we must search Monsieur Gale's cottage again, with care. The Chronos veil, or its plans, may yet be there, and we must verify this confession, the key, the timing, the scene he describes." Japp nodded, motioning to the constable. "Right, we'll turn his place upside down. But if he's telling the truth, who poisoned Wren?" Poirot's eyes gleamed with quiet intensity. "That, mon ami, is the question, Monsieur Thorne, with his rivalry and stolen designs, Mademoiselle Henshaw, with her collector's zeal and tea-stained sleeve. Or perhaps this Monsieur Carver, whose shadow eludes us. The web tightens, but the spider remains hidden." He turned to Timothy, his voice gentle but firm. "You have confessed to a grave deception, Monsieur Gale, but not yet to murder. Remain here, under the constable's watch. The truth, it is close, and Hercule Poirot will find it." As the constable led Timothy to a chair, Japp muttered to Poirot, "He's given us something, but it's not enough. We've still got a locked room and a poisoner on the loose." Poirot's smile was serene. "Enough, Inspector? It is a step toward the light. The clock's whisper grows louder, and soon it will name the guilty. Let us to the cottage, and let us find what Timothy has hidden." They left the shop, the village waking to the bustle of morning. Poirot's mind churned, the gears of the case aligning. Timothy's confession, the missing Chronos veil, the elusive Carver. The grandfather clock's false timeline was explained, but the poison's source remained a shadow. The truth was near, a tick away from revelation, and Poirot's little gray cells were poised to strike the hour. Chapter 11. The Final Tick. The afternoon sun hung low over St. Mary's Mead, its golden rays slicing through the lingering mist to bathe the village in a fleeting warmth. Hercule Poirot, his patent leather shoes gleaming despite the dusty lanes, led Inspector Japp and a constable toward Timothy Gale's modest cottage, the apprentice's confession still ringing in their ears. The air was crisp, scented with fallen leaves, and the village seemed to hold its breath, as if sensing the unraveling of its darkest secret. The grandfather clock's whisper, once a faint murmur, now pulsed in Poirot's mind, urging him toward the truth. Japp, clutching Timothy's sketchbook under his arm, muttered as they approached the cottage. "The lad's admitted to tampering with the clock, Poirot, but I'm still not sold on his innocence. That Chronos veil, if it's in his cottage, it's as good as a confession to murder." Poirot's mustache twitched, his green eyes sharp with focus. "Non, mon ami. The confession, it explains the clock, but the poison, it remains a shadow. We search now for the Chronos veil, or its traces, and we shall see if young Timothy's fear extends to murder." The cottage door creaked open under the constable's key, revealing the same cramped parlor Poirot and Japp had visited before. The workbench in the corner, cluttered with clock parts, seemed untouched, but Poirot's keen gaze swept the room with the precision of a metronome. He moved to the workbench, his gloved fingers sifting through gears and springs, noting the absence of dust, a sign of recent activity. "Inspector," Poirot said, his voice low, "we must search with care. The Chronos veil, if it is here, will be hidden, like a secret within a secret." They began their search, Jap taking the parlor while the constable rummaged through a small bedroom. Poirot focused on the workbench, his fingers probing beneath the scattered tools. Under a pile of oil-stained rags, he found a loose floorboard, its edges slightly worn, as if frequently lifted. He knelt, his cane tapping the wood, and a faint, hollow echo answered. "Tiens," he murmured, prying the board free with a screwdriver. Beneath lay a small bundle wrapped in cloth, its weight suggesting more than mere paper. Poirot unwrapped it carefully, revealing a delicate mechanism. A partially assembled clock, its frame adorned with intricate engravings, and a hidden compartment matching the blueprints of the Chronos Veil. A single sheet of paper, folded within, bore Wren's distinctive script, detailing the clock's final adjustments. "The Chronos Veil," Poirot said, holding up the mechanism, its brass catching the light. "Or a piece of it. Monsieur Gale, he has kept more than sketches." Jap's eyes widened as he joined Poirot, peering at the find. "Blimey, that's it, isn't it? Hidden right under our noses. The lad's done for now." Poirot's expression remained serene, but his mind raced. "Not yet, Inspector. This is evidence of theft, but not of murder. We must return to the shop, confront our suspects, and let the clock speak its final truth." They secured the mechanism and returned to Wren's clock shop, where Timothy Gale waited under the constable's watch, his face a mask of dread. Poirot had summoned Reginald Thorne and Clara Henshaw, and now the three suspects stood in the shop's shadowed interior, the grandfather clock looming over them like a judge. Thorne's arms were crossed, his sharp eyes defiant. Miss Henshaw sat with icy composure, her sapphire brooch glinting. Timothy trembled, his gaze fixed on the floor. Poirot stood before the clock, his presence commanding the room. "Mes amis," he began, his voice steady and clear. "The mystery of Monsieur Wren's death is near its end. The Chronos Veil, it has been found, hidden in the cottage of Monsieur Gale. His confession, it explains the stopped clock, a desperate act to obscure the hour of death. But the poison, it points to a deeper truth. He held up the mechanism, its engravings catching the light. This is the Chronos Veil, or part of it, stolen by young Timothy to claim as his own. Yet the poison, slipped into Monsieur Wren's tea at 8, requires a hand more cunning than a frightened apprentice's." Thorne snorted, his voice sharp. "So the boy's a thief and a liar. Why not a murderer? He had the key, the opportunity. Miss Henshaw's tone was cool. "Indeed, Monsieur Poirot. Timothy's deception is clear. I had no part in this tragedy. My visits were for business, nothing more." Timothy's voice cracked, tears brimming. "I told you, I didn't poison him. I took the plans, yes, but I found him dead, I swear." Poirot raised a hand, silencing them. "The poison, it was cyanide, administered in the tea. The cup, it bore only Monsieur Wren's fingerprints, suggesting a moment of trust. The clock, stopped at 11:47, was a ruse, but it tells us the killer wished to mislead. Let us consider the motives." He turned to Thorne, his gaze piercing. "Monsieur Thorne, your rivalry with Wren was bitter. The blueprint in your shop, it mirrors his Chronos Veil. Did you seek to eliminate him, to claim his genius?" Thorne's face reddened. "I told you, my designs are my own. I was in my shop, not here poisoning tea." Poirot nodded, then faced Miss Henshaw. "Mademoiselle, your passion for clocks is unmatched. The tea stain on your sleeve, it suggests proximity to the crime. Did you desire the Chronos Veil so fiercely that you acted to possess it?" Her eyes flashed, but her voice remained steady. "I am no poisoner, Monsieur Poirot." My sleeve was stained at home, as I said. I left Rennes alive, and well Poirot turned to Timothy, his tone gentle but firm. And you, Monsieur Gale, your ambition led you to steal, to deceive. But did it lead you to murder, to silence your master before he exposed you? Timothy sobbed, shaking his head. I didn't. I found him dead, I swear it. Poirot paced, his cane tapping rhythmically. The truth, it lies in the details. The oil smudge on the back door, it matches the tools of a clockmaker. The key, returned to its hook, was polished, as if to erase its use. And the Chronos veil, hidden in Timothy's cottage, confirms his theft, but not his guilt in murder. He stopped, before the clock, his eyes gleaming. The killer, they knew Monsieur Rennes's habits. They entered with a key, poisoned the tea, and left, locking the door behind them. But the clock, it was stopped later, by Timothy, to create a false timeline. This tells us the killer acted at 8, and Timothy's panic came after. Japp stepped forward, his voice urgent. Then who, Poirot? We've got the clock, the poison, the Chronos veil, but no killer. Poirot's smile was serene. The killer, Inspector, is one who moved in shadow, unseen. Monsieur Carver, the London client, he remains elusive, but his role is a distraction. The true culprit is here. Among us? He turned to Timothy, his voice softening. Monsieur Gale, you have confessed to theft and deception, but your fear, it is genuine. You found your master dead, and in panic you stopped the clock. But the poison, it was already in the tea, placed by another. Poirot faced the group, his gaze piercing. The cyanide, it was carried in a vial, slipped into the cup when Monsieur Rennes was distracted. The killer, they were close to him, trusted. And the oil smudge, it points to a clockmaker's hand. He paused, letting the silence weigh on them. Mademoiselle Henshaw, your composure, it is admirable, but the tea stain, it is not from your breakfast. You visited the shop that evening, oui? You brought the cyanide, knowing Monsieur Rennes's habit, and you left, locking the door with the key you had acquired. Miss Henshaw's face paled, her hands gripping her brooch. That is absurd, Monsieur Poirot. I was home, as my housekeeper confirmed. Poirot shook his head. Your housekeeper, she confirms your return at 6, but not your presence at 8. The tea stain, it matches the blend in Rennes's shop. You desired the Chronos veil, and when he refused, you acted to ensure it would not fall to another. Thorne's eyes widened, and Timothy gasped, but Miss Henshaw rose, her voice icy. You have no proof, monsieur. This is speculation, nothing more. Poirot's smile was unwavering. The proof, mademoiselle, it will come. The laboratory, it analyzes the stain on your sleeve. The Chronos veil, it was not in your possession, but your intent was to secure it after Rennes's death. The little gray cells, they see the truth. Japp signaled the constable, who stepped toward Miss Henshaw. We'll need to take you in for questioning, miss. And that dress, it's evidence now. As Miss Henshaw was led away, her composure cracking, Thorne muttered, I never thought her capable. Timothy, tears streaming, sank onto the stool, his relief palpable. Poirot turned to Japp, his voice calm. The case, it is not yet closed, Inspector. We must confirm the laboratory results, and we must find Monsieur Carver. But the clock, it has spoken, and its final tick has named the guilty. As they left the shop, the village clocks resumed their ticking, a chorus of order restored. Poirot's mind, however, lingered on the elusive Carver, a shadow yet to be dispelled. The truth had emerged, but the final gear of the mystery remained, waiting to be set in place. Chapter 12. The order of time. The twilight of St. Mary's Mead was soft and golden, the village settling into a tranquil hush as the day's revelations rippled through its quiet lanes. Hercule Poirot stood alone in the square, his overcoat buttoned against the evening chill, his green eyes fixed on the darkened windows of Wren's clock shop. The grandfather clock within, its hands no longer frozen but now ticking once more, seemed to pulse with a restored rhythm, as if the truth had set its mechanism free. Inspector Japp had remained at the police station, overseeing the formalities of Clara Henshaw's detention, while Poirot, ever the solitary thinker, sought the clarity of solitude to reflect on the case's resolution. The inn's lantern cast a warm glow as Poirot entered, settling into a corner booth with a cup of tisane, its steam curling like the threads of the mystery now unraveled. His notebook lay open before him, its pages a map of the little gray cell's triumph, the poisoned tea, the stopped clock, the hidden Chronos veil, and the web of motives that had ensnared 3 suspects. Yet, as he sipped his tisane, a faint unease lingered, a single gear yet to click into place. The shadow of Monsieur Carver, the elusive London client. Japp joined him, his face weary but relieved, a file of papers under his arm. "It's done, Poirot," he said, sliding into the booth. "Miss Henshaw's in custody, and the labs confirmed it. The stain on her sleeve matches the tea from Wren's shop, laced with traces of cyanide. She's not talking yet, but we've got enough to hold her. The Chronos veil from Timothy's cottage seals it. She wanted it, and when Wren wouldn't sell, she poisoned him." Poirot nodded, his mustache twitching faintly. "Oui, Inspector. Mademoiselle Henshaw. Her obsession with clocks, it consumed her. The Chronos veil, with its hidden compartment, was a prize she could not resist. She used her frequent visits to learn Wren's habits, slipping the cyanide into his tea when he was distracted, then locking the shop with a key she had procured. Perhaps copied during one of her visits, Japp leaned back, his brow furrowed. "And Timothy's part?" Stopping the clock at 11:47. "A desperate act," Poirot replied, his voice calm. "Young Monsieur Gale. He stole the Chronos veil to claim its glory, but he found Wren already dead at 8. In panic, he stopped the clock to create a false timeline, hoping to deflect suspicion from his theft. His fear, it was genuine, but his crime was not murder." Japp rubbed his chin. "And Thorne? He's off the hook, then?" Poirot's eyes gleamed. Monsieur Thorne. His rivalry was real, and his blueprint suggested theft of ideas, but he lacked the intimacy to poison Wren's. T. His guilt, it is one of envy, not murder. He has promised to reform, and I believe he will honor Wren's legacy in his own way. Japp flipped open the file, pulling out a telegram. "One loose end, Poirot. This Carver fellow, London's come back with nothing, no trace of him at the address Thorne gave, no record of a client by that name. Could be a false name or someone covering their tracks." Poirot's fingers steepled, his gaze distant. "Monsieur Carver, he is a phantom, perhaps a fiction created by Mademoiselle Henshaw to mislead us. Her mention of a London client, it was vague, calculated to distract. Yet, we must remain vigilant. If he exists, he may yet surface, but for now, the case is complete." He closed his notebook, his expression serene. The Chronos veil, it was the heart of this crime, a creation of genius that inspired greed and betrayal. Mademoiselle Henshaw sought to possess it, Timothy to claim it, Thorne to rival it. But it was the grandfather clock, with its hidden compartment and stopped hands, that whispered the truth. Japp chuckled, shaking his head. "You and your clocks, Poirot. I thought that thing was just a piece of furniture, but you made it sing like a witness." Poirot's smile was modest. "The world, mon ami, it turns with precision, like a well-crafted clock. And justice, it must keep time with truth. The little gray cells, they align the gears, and the mystery, it finds its rhythm." As they left the inn, Poirot paused in the square, glancing once more at the clock shop. The village clocks chimed the hour, their chorus a testament to order restored. Timothy Gale, chastened by his confession, would face charges for theft but not murder, his ambition tempered by remorse. Reginald Thorne, humbled by the case, had vowed to honor Wren's legacy with honest craftsmanship. And Clara Henshaw, her elegance shattered, awaited justice for a crime born of obsession. Poirot adjusted his pocket watch, its tick a steady companion. "The order of time, Inspector, it is restored. But the shadow of Monsieur Carver, it reminds us. There are always secrets, waiting for the next tick to reveal them." Japp clapped him on the shoulder, his grin wry. "You'll be chasing shadows next, Poirot. Come on, the train to London's waiting." As they walked toward the station, the village settled into night, its clocks ticking in unison, a symphony of moments passing. Poirot's mind, ever restless, lingered on the case. The poisoned cup, the stopped clock, the hidden Chronos veil. The truth had been found, the guilty named, but the faint echo of Carver's name lingered, a whisper of mysteries yet to come. For now, though, Hercule Poirot was content, his little gray cells at rest, the order of time upheld by the relentless pursuit of justice.